are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Age of Influence series. We're glad to have you here today. So, today we're going to meet with Joseph Cole from TapInfluence, and we're going to chat about what influencer marketing really looks like today and the difference between earned and paid influence and how your brand can use both. So, first, some housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can enter it into the questions section of your control panel. And at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session where we'll answer any of those questions. And we'll also be tracking hashtag Age of Influence on Twitter. So if you want to follow along there or ask questions there, that works too. So thanks, everyone. First, we're going to kick off with introducing Hillary, who's our Director of Marketing here at Insightpool. Hillary, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. Of course, with the holidays coming up, we are excited that we could, fit this in and have Joseph here with us, part of our Age of Influence series. So I am Hillary Settle. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Insightpool. Insightpool, just to give you guys a reference point, we're an earned influencer marketing platform. So we actually help the world's leading brands identify, engage, and really measure the success of engaging influencers organically on social. And our tool, it really helps brands do that. So we're excited to be here. We're excited to have you, Joseph, and giving your perspective on paid influencer marketing. So I'd love to have you kind of kick it off and say hi to everybody and kind of give a little bit of insight about you and TapInfluence.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Bailey, for the intro as well. So I'm VP of Marketing at TapInfluence. Been in this space for almost a year now, but I've basically worked in the startup world where I really love helping companies create new categories, and influencer marketing is one of those things that really inspired me. And I think about how did I make my last purchase decision? And it was through an influencer for the most part, or I was influenced by someone. So I actually just moved to Colorado from San Francisco, so getting to enjoy a little bit of the change in temperatures. Got a little bit of a cough, so excuse me in advance. But yeah, just for a reference point, TapInfluence is a similar solution to Insightpool. We're complementary in many ways, but we do have different focuses. As Hillary mentioned, Insightful is very much focused on earned. Our influencers, we've got an opt-in marketplace of influencers who want to work with brands. So we're a combination of a marketplace, a double-sided marketplace of a big network of influencers, as well as a technology solution to help people automate the influencer marketing campaigns, and also pull out the ROI and data, and then a services team to help with that. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad to have you, and we're excited to really kind of get into what is influencer marketing. What's the difference between earned and paid influence, and with your experience in the space, I think it's going to be really exciting on the conversations we have here. So to kind of kick it off on what actually is influencer marketing. So, to give a perspective on the earned influencer marketing side, influencer marketing has been the buzzword of the year and continues to grow. I know, Joseph, you have seen this growth on your side as well. But it seems that there is a lot of questions around what is influencer marketing. So Joseph, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts around kind of what it is and where it's going, and kind of why there is so much kind of confusion about sort of defining the space and having marketers kind of understanding how to do influencer marketing the right way.
Yeah, no, it was funny. I was at Inbound back in November with HubSpot, and Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a marketing thought leader. I won't use his the F bombs, but one of the things is us as marketers, we often complicate things. But it's definitely the term du jour, if you will. And if you look at things like Google search alone, there's been a huge surge in the actual search volume. I think now it's upwards of 160 million search results. And then of course, over the past few years, I'd say from 2013, we did see a spike. And then I'd say, according to Google Trends, at least from what I researched, the search term alone has increased by 140%. So, Hillary, for the audience and if people are still, confused about what influence marketing, you are at the right place. Insightpool and TapInfluence, that's what we focus in. But if you do search what is influence marketing, you'll get a handy little blog that I've featured here prominently in this image on the slide to kind of give you a nice breakdown of what is influence marketing. But I think what it really is, and if you look back at history, and you tell me what your thoughts are here, Hillary, is that it's probably one of the oldest forms of marketing, right? It's really centered around word of mouth. And it's where people are informed by other people who have significant influence to drive your brand's message in this new world or inform a recommendation or purchase decision. And that's really why, so why has it exploded? Beyond that definition, yeah, okay, it makes sense. But it's because of things like ad blocks, spam, high cost per lead, low return on ad spend. And the fact is, it's really powerful. It works. There's SEO value. It's sexy, and there's significant ROI.
Yeah, no, I mean we're seeing really when you look at influencer marketing on kind of where it's going and what brands are really looking for to say, what is influencer marketing as a whole? How can it actually contribute to the success of my business? And am I even doing it right? Is it the Kim Kardashians of the world? Is it a different level of influence? And I think kind of here you've kind of broken that down as saying it's more about the word of mouth, being able to identify the right influencers for your business.
Yeah, that's definitely one piece of it. And I think to really understand influence marketing, you have to first understand what is an influencer. So on this slide here, we've got a few examples. You've got Michael Phelps to the very left. You've got Kim Kardashian. You've got an image of a prominent blogger, the Cookie Rookie, and a legit skateboarder, his name being Sage Gold. So here's the thing: it's like all these people, they have influence, right? And the thing is, if I were to ask a question to this audience, I'm not sure, they might be a little more savvy this way, but I'm almost 100% positive that everyone here would say Kim Kardashian. Of course, Kimmy's an influencer. What are you talking about? So if you go to the next slide, it might be a surprise here. So Kim Kardashian actually isn't an influencer. Now, Sage is an influencer, and so why is this the case? Now, if you go to the next slide, so the thing is, the difference between Kimmy and Sage and these other influencers is that there's this thing that we, at least at TAP, have defined as the pyramid of influence. That's the thing on the left. So Kim Kardashian, she would sit at the very top. She's a celebrity. Of course she has influence. But what happens is her content that she creates for brands becomes secondary to her celebrity. So one example of this was her recent jaunt in Paris, where she was held at gunpoint. And that was really the story, period. But on top of that, you're paying a lot for reach, which isn't synonymous with ROI or return on investment. So the easiest example that I can give here is that it's like paying for a keyword that has lots of clicks but doesn't have any conversion. And then if you look at the bottom of this pyramid, you have advocates and brand ambassadors, and they're great from an aggregate standpoint for things like ratings and reviews, but the problem is their influence is pretty low. Now, real influence is in this thing called the power middle, and that's the middle of this pyramid. And that's where you get people like Sage Goldnick, the cookie influencer, social media celebrities, premium influencers, micro influencers. And that's the thing here is what you get is increased reach, increased relevance. You get a lower cost per engagement because you're getting more engagement with the content that they're sharing. And you're getting you're getting sales lift. So Sage Goldnick, the guy that I shared earlier with the skateboard, is more of a social media celebrity. And the cookie worker blogger, for example, might fall into that micro influencer realm. So both of them are really great as influencers. And the reason for that is that the influence that they have is because of the content that they create. What are your thoughts, Hillary?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at these celebrity influencers like Kim Kardashian that has millions and millions of followers, it can be very challenging for brands to say, yes, she's this, this VIP celebrity. She must be able to drive the needle on my business. But with those millions of followers, it's very hard to identify the key target market for your business, which I feel a lot of brands are having a challenge with. So to your point, I mean, we are right there with you on the power of the power middle, and kind of breaking that down on how we sort of define the influence marketing social landscape, which is very similar on kind of that idea of on where people fall with influence. And when you look at that power middle being those micro influencers, those those influencers that are able to have a voice and have an audience that's very niche and marketable for their personal brand, brands are able to identify and kind of align with them to say, yes, you're going to actually be able to drive the needle on engagement and brand lift because your content is very in line with our brand message. Which, to your point, that's the true understanding of what influencer marketing is all about. It's not about having millions of followers. It's having followers that care about the content that you're producing.
Exactly.
I feel like that's very similar with when we're talking about true influence, we're definitely on the same page there. And we kind of broke it down a little bit too on kind of defining that power middle. Insightpool uses a lot of social data to give brands a better understanding about their influencers. And I kind of broke it down here a little bit around this power middle and understanding characteristics about these influencers around, their audience size, a little bit more about them from a location standpoint, gender, age, but then also understanding what conversations they're influential in, what kind of hashtags they're sharing, what content that they care about, who they're following, what's been trending, what's happening in real time, and then also affiliations, what social channels are we seeing, certain areas of influence happening, more on Twitter versus Instagram, or is it kind of that omni-channel influence? So when we sort of look at it here, we kind of break down that influencer profile a bit more granular to understand, who these micro influencers are, who these citizen influencers are for brands. And, when we talk about actual ROI and conversion, and I know, Joseph, you kind of mentioned this before when we talk about the power middle, investing in this group, this influencer group and influencer audience, it really does pay off. When you look at the increase on engagement rates, and really having it as the avenue of, producing more engagement versus, some of these other paid channels, you were speaking to the increase in ad blockers and avenues where you're really not sure who is sharing your audience, who is seeing your audience, with being able to kind of control your message within these influencer groups. We're seeing just an increase in ROI for our brands. I'd love to kind of hear your perspective there a little bit more in detail around the power middle and kind of how TAP looks at it.
Yeah, similar to your graph here, we put it in a pyramid, right? But the concept is basically the same in that the power middle is really where you get the most impact. So, for example, they might not have the biggest following. We on average define the power middle of people having a following of around 10,000 folks. I know that you got a definition similar to that, so that's that being the average. And what we've noticed is that, and I think it goes back to that whole celebrity concept, is people are in awe of the celebrity and sometimes get in awe of the mass following that some influencers have. But the thing that we found out that is that cost per engagement increases with sometimes increases with high reach, and then the reason there is that you're getting less engagement. So more reach oftentimes means less engagement, and the reason for that is that the audience isn't necessarily as relevant to the brand or to the marketer or to their audience, and what for what they're trying to solve for. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways in terms of the power middle and why it's important to focus on that middle of the pyramid or the middle of this graph here.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, with kind of moving into talking more about, how this is so powerful, and really talking about, the power middle, influencer marketing as a whole being so powerful. What are you seeing as some of the reasons why influencer marketing is so powerful right now?
I think it comes into the understanding the landscape of who we're marketing to. And so there's, one of the stats that you have here is, the millennial and Gen Z population. And so they don't watch TV anymore for the most part. They watch TV on a phone, or they watch it on a computer, or they're looking at Snapchat. So you're missing eyeballs, and I think actually for the first time, digital advertising is actually surpassing investment in TV. So that's good news and bad news in that you're going to have more ways to track and get in front of people. But what comes with that is that there's an increase in ad block, there's an increase in social algorithm changes, and then also it goes back really to understanding the persona of who you're trying to reach and the world that they live in today, right? So they're not watching TV, they're not paying attention to ads. They're following and they're becoming, they're influenced or following these people who, they call influencers, who we call influencers.
Right. And I mean, and would you say, I mean, this is, back to the sort of beginning, when you were defining influencer marketing, it really is at this point the best way to, create word of mouth for your brand, compared to sort of really any other avenue. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, I agree. It goes back to the fundamental of when you think about if you really think about your last purchase decision, if it were a significant purchase decision, say for example a car, you probably did your research, you probably watched a few YouTube videos, and you made the decision subconsciously based on that. So that's a form of word of mouth in itself. And then also, if you wear makeup, oftentimes, I've seen a ton of these influencers, transforming themselves, just looking completely different on YouTube, and it's amazing the amount of followers and comments and engagement that these people get. And again, there's real sales and real lift from, people actually watching these videos, and that's because of the influencers, and it's because of the content that they create. It's meaningful, it's authentic.
And I mean, and with social media growing, I feel like that's also given influencer marketing an increase of voice and reach, because now people can identify with anybody and quickly connect with them, and find people that they feel like they're part of their lives now, that they're really influencing them on a day to day. If it's what makeup to buy, what clothing to wear, what skateboard to is the best. It's really not just recommendations, from people that or friends, but it's also these strangers that you become involved in their life, which
Absolutely.
it's a really interesting sort of transition, with marketers and with brands kind of understanding that landscape. And, when we're talking about some of the other challenges that marketers are having, and, why influencer marketing is growing so much, this chart just shows it that, I mean, there's no denying that there is a decline in overall brand organic reach, specifically on Facebook. With Facebook and Instagram and Twitter changing their algorithms all of the time, brands really have to understand how to shift and sort of navigate the social sphere. So with the advent of the increase of influencer marketing, influencers that you can kind of find influencers that have content and reach in specific areas that your brand can connect with. That's been sort of the avenue that many brands are looking to go down, with this struggle of declining brand reach, and really just trying to understand how to be more relevant on social media. And I think to the next slide, you also speak about some of those additional challenges we were speaking to before around ad blocking, that it's causing good and bad. It's definitely, at least good for us, right? That it's increasing a better understanding around why influencer marketing isn't just a piece of the puzzle within your marketing strategy. It has to be incorporated in as part of the whole marketing mix.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about what you just said about the algorithm changes. As a marketer, I'm like, oh my God, this sucks, right? And then, and then I get all this feedback from these people on my Facebook posts that I'm sharing on behalf of a company, and then they're like, spam, 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 get off my Facebook. I'm like, you guys suck. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's and it's Facebook that's changing everything, right? But it's I guess if you look at it, right, it's all about the changing dynamic of people, right? We don't want to read ads. I mean, really, do I really want to see another banner ad? No. And so there's a increase in ad block adoption. And so this graph here, or this image, shows the surge of ad blocking usage from July 2009 all the way through to July 2014. Obviously, we're in 2016 going on to 2017, so it's even increased from there. And the reasons why people used ad block, and it's because of things like they don't want to see the ad. Of course, like who really wants to see another ad? Right. The performance, it's privacy. And then, one stat, this, like I said earlier, is a little bit outdated. And, I found out through a Lighthouse 3 report as a research company, where ad blocking adoption is at 440 million worldwide. And that's on mobile alone, right? And then on desktop, it's a little lower, actually. I was surprised by this as well. It's at 220 million. But the thing is, it's growing, and this graph here represents that. And the reason why it's growing is because no one's paying attention to the ads on Facebook, and it doesn't even have to be on Facebook, wherever. And that's bad news for marketers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
And, so why is then influencer marketing so powerful? I mean, I think it's a pretty rhetorical question there, but, beyond the ad block, beyond the marketing changes, these things are impacting brands directly. The real thing that we have to look at here, and why influencer marketing again, is that brands aren't people. Influencers, they're people, and they're people that get you heard because people want to listen to people. I mean, really, if you look at the ad or you see it in Facebook, like, when did anyone ever say that I want to see another ad? Probably not likely, right? So what we're seeing here, because of this, because of traditional advertising not working as well as it used to, is there is a direct impact on the bottom line. So the return on ad spend is lower, the return on marketing investment, and sales lift as a result of that. But then part of some of these stats that really I thought was crazy is looking at the fact that $7.2 billion was lost to bot fraud, and the fact that even Google is saying that 56% of paid ads aren't even seen. And the thing is, because of all of that, real influence is happening now, and savvy marketers are now paying attention and investing in this because of all of this data. And one note I read over I can't remember where I saw this, but I think it was eMarketer, and they said within the next 12 months, 84% of marketers will do influencer marketing. And that's because of all of this.
It's true. I mean, it's only growing, and it's only changing. It's changing, but it's also forcing marketers to think differently about what their marketing strategies are really looking like for the coming years, and really figuring out who their audiences are and how to engage. It's not the spray and pray kind of mentality anymore. It's being more thoughtful about your approach to connecting with your consumers.
100%. Now, and I'm sure you agree with this. We're both all into influence and marketing. Without real influence and real influencers, if you look back at the pyramid of influence, no, it's not Kimmy. Sorry, it's not Kim Kardashian. But the thing is, you have to have real influencers, the power middle that we focused on. And the fact is, it's them who are your content engine, basically. And they're what are the catalyst for getting your marketing heard, period. So without influence, your content, your marketing doesn't gain any traction.
It's true.
I mean, the only way around it is like, I mean, if you disagree, it's like look at the stats, like look at the return on ad spend, look at the return on marketing investment. It's clear that there's something happening now.
Right. Well, because then it turns into, and your point with, if Kim Kardashian puts something out there that's not relevant to her audience or the brand, and it becomes sort of this just blanketed advertisement, and she doesn't,
Yeah,
and then it doesn't do you any good as a brand, because you're not being thoughtful about what the approach is for
hopefully people getting like miscellaneous tweets and Snapchats from the Jenners and the Kardashians.
Right. Right, exactly. So when we talk about, we touched on this before, and definitely excited to get, more in depth around kind of the two sides of influencer marketing. We kind of spoke about it before that, we kind of have a different perspective on influencer marketing from, Insightpool having more of an earned influence approach, and TapInfluence having more of the paid influencer marketing approach, and kind of breaking those out and kind of talking about what the differences are, and then also kind of bringing it back together to say, to do influencer marketing the right way, you kind of have to have a little bit of both, and kind of to kick it off, defining earned influence. It's really, from the granular level, it's unpaid influence. Like, think digital word of mouth. And what we really focus on is, once you identify these influencers that you're looking to engage, it's definitely a long term relationship. This is building rapport. This is not asking somebody to marry them on your first date. This is um, courting them, and making sure that you're sharing content that's relevant to your audience, and then really growing that audience and saying, this is an influencer that we're looking to build a relationship. Let's also see other people within their networks, and expand that audience of influence. And when we talk about this, and we kind of break it down, uh, earned influence has a very authentic sort of approach. Not that paid doesn't have an authentic approach. It's a different way, I think, of engaging someone. When we're talking about how you actually build these relationships, it's really being able to identify who they are, figuring out who these influencers are following, what they care about, how that they can interact with your brand in an organic way, and then making sure that you're being thoughtful with the approach. Going and asking, if you're a B2B marketer and going straight and asking somebody to join a webinar, versus taking a step back and saying, hey, are you even interested in influencer marketing? If you are, share, I would love to share some insights with you. Okay, the second sort of touch point is maybe that ask to join a webinar, or, attend an event. And making sure that your approach is actually, a longer tail approach to build that earned influence over time. And we look at, cost per lead and click through rates. And Joseph, I'm sure, you'll also have some thoughts around this. We're seeing cost per lead is lower for these micro influencers that you're really looking to engage, as well as, when you're talking about that click through rate, that post by micro influencers are really garnering, better, more engagement. They're actually, reading material, are excited about interacting with the brand. And we're really seeing some interesting results around making sure that you're identifying the right audience. And when we're talking about identification is the biggest piece of influencer marketing, at least to kick off your campaign. You need to identify who the influencer is that's going to make the biggest impact for your business. If you're a skateboard company and you're going after a beauty blogger, even if they have an incredible reach, it's not relevant to your brand. And so we really kind of hone in on it when brands first come to us saying, okay, let's identify who these people are. Let's figure out if it's a location base that you're looking to find these influencers in, if it's a conversation or a hashtag that you're wanting to find influencers that are really driving those conversations. If it's a topic, you want somebody that is a CMO at a company or somebody that identifies as a beauty blogger. Like, we can help you identify those and sort of segment out those relationships to drive that that relationship long term. Joseph, from sort of your perspective, how does identification sort of fit when you're working with brands? Is that sort of the first kickoff point for any brands that come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore. And TAP, we have a similar solution of influencer discovery in that any good marketing really begins with understanding the who, right? So if you don't know the questions that people are asking, if you don't understand the pain points, then what's the point? And so with us, at least, it's about finding and discovering those specific influencers that match, that have an audience that is similar to your brand's audience. A lot of times what happens is marketers, again, will fall in awe of, the sheer following of an influencer, right? So they might have like 100,000 followers on Twitter, but that doesn't really mean anything if that audience on Twitter isn't your brand's audience, right? So, it's clear here that obviously to improve things like cost per lead, return on ad spend, and so on and so forth, that you need to ensure that you understand the who and that the brand's audience and the influencer's audience are similar.
Yes. Yeah, and when we're talking about figuring out who these influencers are and making sure you sort of segment and build those relationships, we show here our sort of funnel, our engagement funnel that we use. I'm sure that there's a different approach and many different marketers are using in terms of the buyer's journey. But what we found is really the goal for earned influencer marketing is to move those identified influencers sort of through your funnel to become not only people that are just like you've discovered that are not aware of your brand at all the way to the advocate stage. These are people that convert into customers or influencers that love your brand just organically and are willing to shout from the rooftops that they are really excited about what you're doing, which is the ultimate sort of word of mouth, which is really exciting. But then you have to take it that step further to really be able to build those relationships, to say, that's wonderful, we've identified them, these are the people that we're really looking to engage. And how we sort of have approached it from an organic outreach standpoint is sort of a twofold. It's the activating it one-to-one, sending them direct message, email, kind of talking about what that relationship looks like, or one-to-one messages at scale through social media, and really being able to say, okay, what audiences are working, what audiences aren't. We encourage the brands that we work with to be A/B testing your audiences, really understanding the influencers and comparing and contrasting, the success of those campaigns. So this just gives you a little bit of a breakdown of the metrics, but sort of the best takeaway I would say from the earned influence side is really being able to first identify that power middle audience that's really going to drive the needle for your brand, being able to engage them in a really authentic way, and then engage them, in a thoughtful approach with the right kind of content, build that relationship, and work up to the ask, the end goal of kind of what you're looking for with that relationship. And when we're talking, the sort of counter to earned influence is the paid influence side. So Joseph, I'd love to get your perspective on this, and excited to hear how these are different and then how they also work together.
Yeah, no, of course. I think you did a great job describing the earned influence side. And I think the key takeaway here, regardless, is that influence marketing works because it's authentic. It doesn't matter if it's earned or if it's paid. But here's the thing with paid influence is that at TAP we've got a marketplace of people who've opted in to do influence marketing. So they're a group of say dedicated professionals of around around 60,000 there. They actually want to work as influencers and they're good at it. And the same thing with the power middle, as you mentioned, Hillary, is that they're good at creating content. They speak to authenticity directly. And one of the things that we did that I thought was pretty compelling is that at TapInfluence we initiated a survey to around 200,000 influencers. Their average reach was around 260,000 per influencer, so that's huge. And these are all people who have opted in to be an influencer. And one thing which might relate to the whole concept of earned and paid is they said above compensation. One of the reasons why they want to work with a brand is alignment with the brand's core values. That was the most important thing above compensation. And that said, one of the things I found interesting in the survey and what we found about our paid influencers is that most of the people or influencers at Tap, paid influencers, they have repeat brand customers. And then probably one good example of paid influence is this guy here, Logan Paul. And if you look back at that pyramid of influence, he'd probably fall in that social media celebrity spot. So below a celebrity, above a micro-influencer, but pretty legit, right? And he was featured on the 60 Minutes series, called The Influencers. Hillary, I know that you probably checked that out. But one of the crazy things he gets is that he gets these gigs because his content resonates, obviously. But he does crazy shit like, these random splits and in front of everything you can imagine, right? He goes around the world and then, oh, here's a split. He goes in front of these bananas and does this crazy split. And it sounds ridiculous, but his content works. And he was recently employed, and this is this picture here, and why I've got Dunkin' Donuts in the back, so make me very hungry right now, is that he did this commercial for Dunkin' Donuts, and I think it was paid around, according to 60 Minutes, around $200,000 to create an end-to-end campaign for Dunkin' Donuts. Sounds like a lot, but if you compare this to, say, employing an agency to create that same ad, to distribute the content, it would cost way more than double. And the thing is that it works. There's this long tail of impact. These are professional people who want to do influencer marketing, and we're seeing significant results from it.
It's really amazing. It really is amazing, kind of how these influencers have built their own brand.
Right. And they're, some of them are doing these uncanny things that, when you think about Gen Y and Gen Z, it's the stuff that they're interested in. And, that's where, dollars are shifting, and as far as, marketing and, how to get in front of them. So, I think the key takeaway here, at least in this slide, is that paid influence and earned influence came to fruition because traditional advertising, even in this somewhat of an inbound model, isn't as impactful as it was in the past. But with any good influencer marketing, it's about understanding the who, like what we shared earlier, and that's understanding your audience, and then mapping that along, inbound model, how to keep influencers and how to keep your customers in that journey with your brand. So I think these are just some best practice, in terms of running an influence marketing program, whether it's earned or paid. And the process I would say is pretty simple. It's number one, who is it that you're looking to target? You want to identify that content and see that within influencers. And then number two, you want to look at the performance, like Insightpool. You can do this directly in the TapInfluence platform. And then the next one here is that any good marketer, you have to test and learn and then optimize. Leverage the influencer, again, to amplify the message. That's what we do a lot at Tap is, we first identify the who, get them to create the content, and then get them to, amplify that content by the audience that they have and create engagement. And then what we often do as well is that, we boost that content via the social channels. So you can boost it organically by virtue of the influencer and your network and through your company. And then you can also boost that post or the influencer post through, traditional advertising means like, sponsoring the update. So, what you get out of that, you get better advertising. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be compliant by, it's not advertising in my opinion, but you have to be compliant by FTC regulation. So, you have to use hashtag ad and all that good stuff. But what you get is increased reach, Number two, it's about relevance. You get marketing messages that are actually contextual and authentic. And then number three, there's resonance, and that's because it's good content. And the thing is that it's relevant to the consumer, and that really circumvents the buyer's journey. It sits on top of each stage, right? So it's not like a linear journey, but this whole aspect of influencer marketing happens along this entire journey, which goes from awareness all the way through to decision, all the way through to delight. And the reason why it works is that it accelerates a journey, and then it also helps get your voice, your brand into that conversation. I know I've got a few examples here, Hillary, but I was just curious about your thoughts on the buyer's journey and influencer marketing.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about that, reach, relevance, and really resonating with a brand, that's a key part of really, if you think about people or brands or television shows or really anything that influences you as an individual, it's really sort of understanding where you're saying it. So in some case, that's a level of reach. If it's television, if it's on social media, and then how relevant it is to you. Does this even make sense to me? And then is it really resonating with me? Am I going to make a decision based on this? Am I going to watch the show again? Am I going to retweet this? Am I going to follow this influencers? Am I going to buy this product? And I think where influencer marketing is taking, marketers is down their own journey of, trying to think more human when they're approaching their marketing efforts. And to your point, doesn't matter if it's paid or earned, that authenticity, that authentic piece. And we've heard that from from earned and paid influencers want to also create content that matters to their audience, because the moment their audience feels like they're creating content that doesn't resonate with them, they've already lost their influence. And so
Exactly.
I think that's just the way, the mindset that many marketers are going to have to sort of change that mindset on how they're approaching marketing as a whole.
100%. And so here's a real quick example. We work with a brand, Express. It's a large fashion retailer. One of the things is that they wanted to reach Gen Y males. And Sage Goldnick, it's not like Logan Paul where he's doing crazy splits everywhere, but he's a pretty good hockey player, as well as, he's a really good skateboarder. So anyway, it's about here is identifying the influencer and ensuring that the influencer shares the same audience as your brand. So if you go to the next one here, what happens here is that, leveraging his influence, discovering the right audience, what happens is, through Tap and, similar to Insightpool is that, this content is syndicated automatically to various social platforms. It follows the FTC guidelines. Hate to throw it in on Kimmy, but, you don't want to be like Kim Kardashian and get sued there. And the whole thing is that actually syndicates out through the influencers channels, but then also as a brand, you can promote it and boost it on every channel as well. And so what happened here in this case about understanding number one, who is the intended audience, you increase the engagement, right? So you might have reach, but you also increase engagement and get a lower cost per engagement, which is pretty significant here. And then I think one of the keys, if you're on this slide here, is that they deliver really high quality content. And whether that's a video, photography, blogs, across different social platforms that your consumers consume, it's content that people are reading because it's contextual. And I think it's similar on the next slide here too, is that it works because there's direct ROI, there's sales lift, and that's because they're using real people in real life situations with really high engagement that other people, other consumers can imagine themselves in. So it's not like this fake ad, these are real people creating the content, and you have this significant long tail effect. And there's a little more to come on this as we kind of go over some of the case studies.
Yeah, definitely. So, with kind of giving the earned influence approach and the paid influence approach, where, how do you feel paid and earned can be, used together, and how do you kind of see that fusion happening moving forward?
Yeah, I think it depends on your goals as a company, and I really think it's about number one understanding who is it that you're trying to target. With a paid influencer solution, where one of the things that we when we surveyed influencers again is that a lot of them that in the power middle earn their living from doing influence marketing, and you want to get paid for doing good work. And above all that, there's this intrinsic value in that. The content that they're creating has to have meaning. So I think that's probably an area that bridges the divide between the two. And it's about respecting the influencer. And so, for example, earned influence can definitely impact quite a bit. But I think there are use cases for each scenario, and it all depends on your brand's goals.
Yes, 100%. I agree. And, to kind of have another additional feedback on this, I think, sort of the theme that has been going through this entire webinar is really about those authentic relationships and making sure that that's translating through any avenue and any way you're engaging influencers, and making sure that both efforts supplement that. And I would say, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Joseph, but I would say that, you know, if you start an organic relationship with an influencer, that might actually turn into, a paid relationship, or vice versa. If you have a paid relationship, they might just organically reshare something, or just because they feel very tied to the brand. And a lot of times those kind of fuse together, and really helps your brand just build a better overall relationship with these influencers. Have you seen that happen?
Yeah, I have in some cases to where brands might reach out to influencers and want to work with them and maybe not compensate them. The compensation comes in different forms. So, for example, it might be product that's given to them, or it might be, the recognition that they get from, working with a certain brand to almost build their portfolio. So, I think I've seen it from that perspective as well as, people kind of getting in the door and then, based on the results and the ROI from the influencer campaign, moving or graduating to that, to become using this as part of their profession, part of their income.
Yeah. So, Joseph, where do you sort of see influencer marketing, heading into the next year, into the next few years? Where do you kind of see it going?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the power middle. When you think about search, a lot of companies pay a lot of money for these keywords that have been dominated for quite a while. But what companies are seeing, at least from a search perspective, is that there's this long tail keywords that are having more impact, and that's again about understanding the who in your marketing. So understanding the questions people are asking, understanding the pain points, and then being able to answer that. And so that's why I think this here, what you're saying here, is the bigger focus on the power middle, the micro influencers is definitely going to be one of those areas that we're going to see a big focus in 2017.
Right. And, I know you had mentioned before, talking about the VIP influencers not really being influencers, they're just more of celebrities. And then also
Yeah.
speaking to, making sure that there is a hashtag ad, with a lot of traction around that, good or bad. Where do you kind of see that piece of it going, in the coming year?
Yeah. I mean, it's important because, if you don't disclose correctly, obviously the FTC is like, the IRS, so you don't want to get fined by them if you're a company, especially, and if you're a marketer, so you need to obviously disclose. Here's an example of when this didn't go right, what went wrong. There wasn't any disclosure, there wasn't any creative. Also, what was funny is that this guy, he's a celebrity. He copied and pasted the marketer's instructions into his Instagram post, so obviously that wasn't authentic.
Hmm. It's funny. All the Kardashians, I would consider him one of those, I would think, right?
Yeah.
They're all getting in trouble. Um,
Oh yeah.
well, additionally to, sort of these VIP, celebrities kind of having to put a little bit tighter restrictions on, where influencer marketing is going, which I feel like is helping the market as a whole just be smarter about their marketing efforts. We've also seen an increase in actual titles that people are having, actual influencer marketing, coordinators or managers, or actually owning a whole team of people that are dedicated to doing influencer marketing at companies. Have you seen, with this, growth of influencer marketing, have you also seen that when you, are when your sales team or who, your CEO is going out into the market? Are you seeing more of this happening in the field?
Yeah, it's actually becoming a leading strategy. So, we did a report with Altimeter, and a lot of companies, enterprises weren't sure where to pull the influencer marketing budget. So, was it from PR? Was it from social? Was it from content? And so, what we're noticing now is that it's becoming a leading strategy, and it's because of the dynamics in the market, right? So, things like ad blocking, social changes, and so on. And so it's actually becoming something that informs how these other aspects of marketing are managed. And so you have the thing like, people actually having real positions around the specific function, and that function actually becoming, the umbrella to help, drive the budgets for content and social and so on.
Great. When we talk about, the industry changing, kind of more of the movement into 2017, I know your team actually put out a prediction ebook of sorts, which you'll definitely have to share with the audience after. What's something else that you're sort of seeing, moving into 2017?
Yeah, one of the predictions, thanks for calling it out, is about data. And people are now calling BS on things like, reach, because what does reach mean if you don't get anything from it, right? And hence the power of the power middle, as you mentioned. And so, strategies for influencer marketing become more sophisticated, the ways that we measure it also are more sophisticated. Media value views, they only touch the surface. And what you're also seeing is that social platforms are now adopting, metrics beyond views, and they're introducing analytics that actually understand, conversion paths. And, I think that specifically Instagram has been doing a lot of that. And so the thing here, I guess the key takeaway in lieu of time here is that, people are going to be focused more on ROI more than ever, right? And it's all about understanding, the ROI, whether that's before, during, and after a campaign, and understanding how influencer marketing impacts that entire journey.
Right. When we talk about, the journey from a paid influencer, earned influencer, combined influencer marketing strategy. I know we have a few case studies from your team, from our team. I'd love to hear how you've seen this sort of influencer marketing in action from your side.
Yeah. So I think this is a great segue from the data to what is actually most important. And so we initiated a survey with a large Fortune 500 food brand. And what we wanted to do is, tie revenue against, influencer marketing, people who saw the influencer content versus people who didn't. And so we put together the sales effect study with Nielsen Catalina Solutions. So if you go to the next one here, we tracked, again, behaviors from online for people who, a control group, people actually who saw the influencer content versus people who didn't. And also tied loyalty card data in the same fashion to understand, what was the impact of people seeing this influencer marketing content and how did that impact sales. So, there was loyalty card data to tracking pixels. And so what we discovered is that there was a huge lift in sales. And that, over the course of the past 12 months, launching this campaign, people who were exposed to the content had, a significant path to conversion. And what we noticed is that, the lift just kept on growing. And the big takeaway here is that, there was an 11x ROI in this advertising or this through influencer marketing compared to non-influencer marketing or traditional influencer marketing. So the stats are all here, and what happened is the display ads had $16 per 1,000 impressions, whereas the influencer marketing generated 285. So it's pretty significant. And the thing is, what happened is that the sales lift continued to grow, and we're seeing an uptick in this growth of influencer marketing as a result of the creative that they put forward and the purchases that the consumer made.
Awesome. I mean, when you talk about results of influencer marketing, it's there. You're seeing this increase of engagement, increase of ROI for brands, and it's working, and it's really working. And to share, a story from one of our customers, Craftsman, they actually were running this major campaign around hashtag Made to Race. And Craftsman was actually sponsoring the first female driver in the race's history. And what they were really looking to do is figure out who are the key influencers that are going to be talking about hashtag Made to Race. Also, people that maybe aren't as familiar with the campaign, but would still be a potential audience for Craftsman. And so what we were able to do is say, okay, let's broaden the search a little bit. They first said, let's just identify overall racing fans. Let's just identify women pro racers and just kind of whittle it down there. But what we found is there was a lot more women that were interested in classic cars and cars restoration, and really built out this incredible audience for them to say, okay, there is actually a larger audience out there that not only would identify with the Made to Race campaign, but also would care about the Craftsman brand as a whole. And what we were able to see is we were actually able to not only increase their total reach from this segment of audience of users, but actually getting them the exposure that they wanted around the hashtag, great conversations with the right audience of people. People actually sharing some of the content, including a NASCAR driver kind of jumping into the conversation, sharing how she's excited about this sponsorship that Craftsman was part of, and then also increasing the reply rate, the overall activity, and Craftsman was able to build a whole net new audience for themselves of influencers, really in that power middle space, to say, not only are you influential with the conversations you're driving, but the engagement that they created was really authentic, and Craftsman was able to share this initiative and also build a whole net new community. And so it's exciting, and Joseph, I'm sure you agree, it's exciting to see all of the exciting results that influencer marketing is garnering and is going to be increasing in the coming months. But before we kind of end, I know Bailey has been getting some questions on social media. I know we're kind of coming up on time, but hopefully everyone can stay a little bit longer for the Q&A. We also have been receiving a few questions. If anybody has to jump off, we will be following up with an email, including this whole recording, so you can have that and also share with your team. But Bailey, if you want to share some of the questions that you've been getting on social media.
Yeah, sure. So again, thanks everyone for participating here today. Joseph, have a quick question, actually for both of you. What are some common mistakes that you see brands making when working with influencers or launching their own influencer marketing campaign?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's a pretty loaded one. There's lots of things to share there, but one of the things that you have to focus on is authenticity, right? And so influencers create good content because of the authenticity behind it. And if one of the biggest problems that brands have, at least from my perspective, is that they try to micromanage the entire influencer marketing content creation. So, for example, they'll be very stringent on their brand guidelines. They'll want to ensure that they say XYZ because it's in their messaging. But what happens there is that it becomes inauthentic, and the impact of the influencer campaign or the influencer marketing content becomes less effective.
Right. I think it's really important for brands to make sure that influencers have their own voice throughout campaigns, or else it's going to come off as really formal and kind of awkward. Hillary, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Joseph. I've also seen, um, brands not taking enough time to figure out who the audience is that they're looking to go after, and some of the testing that they might do, it does look inauthentic, and also it doesn't register as, hey, I'm looking to build a relationship with you from the earned influence side. It's more of, I need you to create an action because you're relevant to my brand, instead of, hey, I want to hear your perspective on this. So that's something that I've definitely seen as a mistake for brands. I also think that what we've seen is not thinking of influencer marketing as a siloed campaign and initiative. And Joseph, I'd be curious to hear what you think about this, versus saying, okay, my paid and earned influencer marketing strategy can fit in with all the other, marketing initiatives I'm doing from, sort of an omni-channel approach. And it's combined as part of the marketing mix, not a siloed initiative. Have you seen that as something that's also been sort of a struggle for marketers?
Yeah, so influencer marketing, like any other marketing channel, for lack of a better word, works best when it's part of a larger integrated marketing campaign. So using influencer marketing in a silo without understanding the entire buyer's journey and the stages that people go through will set you up for failure. And so it's really about understanding that influencer marketing almost in a way is your perpetual content engine. And so really good content to work, right? You have to understand, okay, at which stage does it make sense to share this within the buyer's journey? Is it impactful? Really understanding your persona and how they go through, their engagement with your brand inside out is key.
Right, that's great. I think those are all really important tips for brands to keep in mind. Another question we have here is, how do brands find influencers that are right for their brand, brand personality, and their brand target markets?
Sure. Hillary, do you want to start that one off?
Sure, sure. I mean, to the point we kind of made about understanding the power middle. I mean, I haven't seen too in depth on TapInfluence's side, which Joseph, you can speak to this, but I know at least on, for Insightpool, you're really able to learn a lot about your influencers. I mean, with all of the social data, all of the access that we as consumers allow marketers to access, from social specifically, being able to not understand and identify the right influencers for your business, is a poor excuse, because it is so readily available out there. So make sure that you're using the right tools, doing your due diligence on figuring out what your influencers are talking about, what conversations they're joining in, how active they are, what their community is discussing, and how if that really aligns with your brand goals. Do you
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Similar to Insightful, TapInfluence has a search capability to where we look at three different things. It's a data trifecta, that we call it. And so what we look at is influencer data or audience data, so understanding demographics, verticals, looking at audience data, so who are their followers, do they fit with the brand's target, and then looking again at performance data, so things like influencers selected based on their cost per engagement, based on previous campaigns, to really ensure that the influencer marries the brand, right? So that there isn't a disconnect there between who their audience is versus who the brand's audience is. And so it's about going through this process of identifying based on specific characteristics from their demographics, firmographics, interests, verticals, and so on.
Awesome, thanks. So I think that's all we have for today. Thanks, Joseph, for meeting us today, and thanks everyone for participating. Anyone who enjoyed this webinar, we have another up in our series next week. We'll be meeting with Get Response to see how they've used influencer marketing and Insightpool to drive traffic to their site and to become a thought leader in the marketing space. So Thanks everyone for joining us for the Age of Influence series, and we hope to keep seeing you.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.